The cuffs clicked so loud I swear they echoed off those perfect brick facades, blue and red, washing the street like a cheap light show. And Officer Logan Walker held up a little baggie by my face like he'd just won a carnival prize. Not mine, never was. And in that split second under the streetlight on Elmwood Drive, I made the call that would decide the whole night. I decided to breathe, to count, to wait. You want the truth. I knew exactly what was happening. Not because I'm paranoid, but because after 20 years of reading Hostile Intent, you recognize a hunt when you feel the teeth. My name is Commander Daniel Price, Special Operations husband, father guy, who likes a quiet drive home after a long day at the Pentagon, and apparently the kind of black man in a nice car who makes some folks squint and ask themselves who belongs where. The clock on the BMW said 8:47 p.m. Elmwood Heights looked like a catalog cover. Manicured lawns, old money houses, porches with ferns. The kind of neighborhood where a leaf blower at the wrong hour draws committee emails. And I was coasting down the block thinking about leftover pasta and whether my daughter's science project volcano needed more baking soda when the cruiser slipped in behind me. Too neat, too patient, not patrolling, tracking. You know what I mean. I eased to the exact speed limit, hands high on the wheel, so every move was on camera, my training whispering in my ear like it always does. Visibility control narration. Then the lights flipped and that quiet street turned into a stage. I signaled, pulled under a lamp, took one breath to settle my voice, and lowered the window. Officer Walker approached with the shoulders of a man who's certain he's the main character, palm floating near the holster like a prop. He didn't say why he'd stopped me, just license and registration clipped. No. Hello. No reason. Not even the polite lie they sometimes lead with. I kept it calm. I'm going to reach for my wallet with my right hand, registrations in the glove box. Slow movements, easy narration. He didn't nod. He didn't need to. The script was already written in his eyes. He took my ID, looked at my name like it owed him money, leaned halfway into the cabin and announced for the neighbors and the dash cam. I smell marijuana. And I almost laughed, not out of disrespect, but because I haven't touched anything illegal since a college mistake I still regret. Because one random positive test ends my career and compromises operations that never make the evening news, I said, "You're welcome to search the vehicle, sir. You won't find anything." And he gave me a smile that said he'd already found what he needed. Backup rolled up fast. Sirens tucked away like secrets. Officer Ethan Park hand on the weapon, because muscle memory is a loud friend. Officer Olivia Diaz, eyes moving like she had a running tally in her head. They formed the triangle standard control voices, low but rehearsed. Hands where we can see them. Keep them on the roof. And I did what I've taught 100 young soldiers to do when a situation is wrong but the consequences for going loud are worse. I complied, I narrated, I breathed. Neighbors stepped outside in slippers and curiosity, and one of them, a retired teacher named Helen Davis, who's been on that block longer than the maple trees, started recording, with the steadiness of someone who has graded too many papers to let bad answers slide. Park searched the driver's seat, then the passenger side. Diaz mirrored him. Glove box, floor mats, door pockets, cable tray, nothing. The Lexus was clean because my life is clean in the ways that matter. When a clearance letter lives in your wallet, 10 minutes turned into 20. Walker's voice entered that register men use when their story isn't cooperating. "Open the trunk," he said, and I passed the fob and narrated, my hands again inside. Golf clubs, gym bag, suit bag from the cleaner road kit, all lined like I was trying to impress an inspection team. Still nothing, and the air changed. Not because the truth won, but because the lie started to sweat. Diaz looked at Walker with a quiet question. Park said, "Nothing back here," and Walker decided he wasn't leaving. Empty-handed, he walked back to his cruiser alone, the body cam angle shifting his shoulders, set in that way that tells you a decision has been made. When he returned, his hand was closed, then open plastic glint under the lamp. "Well, well," he said, too loud, found it wedged under the driver's seat, held it up for the street like a trophy at a Little League banquet, and I looked not at him, but at the carpet I'd vacuumed that afternoon, the exact seam. He pointed to the clean space where there had been nothing. "That is not mine," I said, slow and steady, loud enough for misses. Davis's camera to catch every syllable, handcuffs followed like punctuation, my wrists hot with the bite of plastic, the kind of small pain that tries to make you smaller. He read rights. I listened and counted because counting helps, and I made the second decision of the night. I kept my mouth shut about who I was. I could have ended it. Flashed a badge that changes rooms. dropped a name that opens doors, but I've learned that truth carries farther when you let the people playing games write their own confessions into the record. They drove me to Woodbridge Station, fluorescent lights and old paint, the particular smell of coffee and paperwork, Sergeant Maria Santos at the desk, with that veteran stillness that says she has already seen this movie twice and didn't like the ending either time. Walker played for the room, possession, expensive car, likely stolen all the cliches in a row like bowling pins. Santos looked at me, really looked then at the baggie, then at the address I gave, Elmwood Heights, the neighborhood where property tax bills make you sit down before you open them. She asked for occupation, I said. United States Army. Not the whole thing, not the acronyms, just enough to match the facts that would be coming anyway. Walker smirked. Sure you are. What branch? The post office, and Santos didn't take the bait. She asked for identification. I told her. Walker had it. She paged through my wallet, the building pass, the clearance card, the ID that doesn't leave my pocket unless it has to. And her face didn't change much, but the air did, like the pressure dropping before a storm. They put me in interview 3. Not a cell, not a courtesy, just a wise choice. Santos set my phone on the table and the screen lit with the tone, no one in my line ignores a missed check-in. Then the second tone escalation, and I told her quietly, there will be calls. And she nodded like she had already moved the chess pieces in her head. Chief James Keller came in like a man who'd been pulled away from dinner and wanted everyone to know it. Tie loose. Smile that slid off his face when he read the ID and took in the phone, and the way Santos's posture had shifted half an inch toward caution, and that was the exact moment the front doors opened for people who don't wait for invitations. Special Agent Daniel Garcia from the FBI's Baltimore field office walked in with 6 agents and a tone you feel in your spine. Not hostile, just absolute. He flashed credentials, said, "Where is Commander Price?" and the room stopped, pretending this was routine. Chain of custody. Changed hands. Body cams and dispatch tapes were copied. Evidence bags were sealed with fresh labels, and the station was told, politely but firmly, nobody enters, nobody leaves. The truth, once it had help, moved fast. Bodycam footage showed a clean search, a gap, a walk to a cruiser when nothing needed retrieving, a return with a miracle fingerprints where none should exist. Witness statements from neighbors who used words like calm and compliant misses. Davis's video with clear audio of my narration and Walker's volume for the performance. Garcia sat across from me and said, "The thing good agents say when someone else's stripes have been used wrong. On behalf of my office, I'm sorry." And I told him, "Don't be sorry, be thorough." And he smiled with the kind of respect that isn't for rank, but for refusing to let anger run the show. Outside the parking lot sprouted tripods. The local news shoved microphones forward like spears made of questions, and I kept it simple when they asked if my rank saved me. I shouldn't have needed it. I said plenty of folks don't have a neighbor like Helen or a phone that screams when a check-in is missed. The point here isn't that a commander got out of cuffs. The point is that a lie almost stood up until the truth brought friends. The midpoint, the twist, the part people replay, it wasn't the FBI badge or the titles in my wallet, it was the look on Walker's face when he realized that every shortcut he'd carved into his routine was about to be measured by someone who didn't work in his building. Garcia rolled interviews room by room. Diaz talked. Park tried to stand still and found he couldn't. Keller did that dance locals do, where cooperation sounds like a request for leniency. Santos didn't dance. She stood, she answered. She kept the paper clean within days. The U.S. Attorney unsealed charges, deprivation of rights under color of law, falsifying records, evidence tampering conspiracy, and the phones in Baltimore lit with people who hadn't had a neighbor filming when it was their turn. Men and women who said, yeah, that happened. Who had pled to avoid a longer sentence because someone found a baggie when the search had already come up empty. The pattern emerged like developing fluid in an old darkroom, slow, then undeniable. People asked me later why I didn't flash the ID at the curb and go home, why I let it run long enough to become a federal case, and the answer is not noble, it's practical. Because stopping it at the curb would have saved me and left everyone else in line behind me, because the system only fixes what it can't ignore, because sometimes the right thing is to take the long way through the mess. So the cleanup crew has footprints to follow. You know what I mean? There were hearings, lots of them, the kind where the microphones pick up the sound of water pouring into paper cups, and someone's pen shakes, even though their voice doesn't. I told the same story a dozen times with tiny variations depending on which committee thought it owned the truth that week. I spoke about the small humiliations, how you narrate your hands like a preschool teacher. So no one can claim they were surprised how you answer questions you've already answered, how anger shows up like a friend who wants to fight and you have to say not yet. There were also quiet rooms where real work got done, policy folks and training chiefs and a handful of officers who were brave enough to admit the old way rewarded numbers instead of constitutionality. Elmwood Heights had a town meeting where neighbors argued about whether we were a good community with a bad officer or a comfortable community that didn't want to look too hard at what comfort had cost other people. And in the end, change didn't arrive on a banner. It arrived in memos that became orders, automatic body cam, activation tied to light bars, complaint processes that can't be buried, training blocks called Constitutional First, where recruits sit through a video of my arrest before they get the keys to a cruiser, and a reminder that a badge is an oath, not a permission slip. The courtroom climax didn't feel like a movie. It felt like a dental appointment with a band slow and loud at the same time. Walker took a plea. The evidence stacked too high to climb. Park and Diaz answered for their parts. Keller learned what accountability looks like when you ignore patterns because the numbers look good on a slide. I stood in uniform because my chain asked me to and said what mattered to me most, that a sentence is a start, not a solution, that justice is bigger than one defendant's years, that we were talking about trust, about whether everyone's kids can ride home at night without narrating their breathing. The judge gave Walker 35 years. The room exhaled. Some folks cheered. I felt a kind of tired relief, not because I wanted him crushed, but because I wanted the next officer watching from the back to understand the price of shortcuts. After life became Saturday mornings again, Angela stirring coffee while our daughter tried to get out of putting on cleats, me checking the mailbox like it might hold something other than coupons and committee letters. And yet the night lived on inside me in a way that wasn't heavy, more like a scar. You rub when the weather changes. I kept the BMW not as a trophy, just a reminder that a car can be a mirror other people use to see what they want. I wave to Mrs. Davis. Every time I turn onto Elmwood, she waves back with the hand that held all of us steady. Sometimes a young officer recognizes me at a gas station and says he had to watch the Academy video twice, and it made him angry. Then thoughtful, and I tell him that's the right order, that anger without thought is a spark, not a light. So was I wrong to wait to let Walker finish his performance so the record would hold not just my side but the whole show, or did waiting make the truth land in a way no speech ever could? I know where I stand, but I also know good people can argue it both ways, and maybe that's healthy. Maybe the argument keeps the lesson alive longer than a clip on the evening news. You tell me, did the system work because a commander was involved, or did it work because a neighbor refused to blink and the right people refused to be sloppy with the facts? And if it took my rank to bring the spotlight, is it fair to say that spotlight should swing wider and stay longer until it isn't needed at all? You know what I mean? If you've listened this far, thank you. I don't need sympathy. I need witnesses who stay when the lights go off. I need folks who can hear a story like this and ask if their town's comfortable. Silence is covering something loud. Drop a comment. Argue with me if you want. Tell me where you're watching from and whether you've seen a stop that felt wrong but nobody could prove it at the time. Tell me what justice looks like to you when blue and red hit your rear view. And if you think stories like this should keep getting told until they stop being true. Like the video, share it with someone who might need the courage to hold their phone steady and subscribe so we can keep talking. Like neighbors who believe that truth and patience and receipts can still change the math.